Hello, this is Morgan Freeman. For discounts on Simon's best-selling online fundraising courses, go to www.changefundraising.com/training and use coupon code PODCAST. Complete them in your own time, wherever you want. Get busy living or get busy buying.
You're listening to Simon Scriver's Amazingly Ultimate Fundraising Superstar podcast, talking all things fundraising, charities, nonprofits, and more. Here's your host, as always, Simon Scriver.
I am here unwinding after a long AFP Congress, a fantastic conference once again in Toronto. I was presenting a couple of sessions. And as we come out of a conference like this, I'm always tired, but I'm always reflecting on what we can do differently as we get out of it. And I'm sure everyone who's leaving the conference is thinking about, how do we put into action what we've learned and the things that we want to do differently when we get out there. And that is sometimes a huge struggle. I ended up talking to my friend Kimberley MacKenzie, who's with me today. And we basically started exploring this thing and thought it would be a good idea to start recording this and get it out to you. So I have Kimberley here with me, also unwinding after AFP Congress. How are you, Kimberley?
Well, I am also tired, and I stayed out a little late last night.
And every other night during the conference?
But yeah. I like it, I was here for the first session of every morning, so that's a win-win-win.
You're a party animal, and yet you still make all the sessions, whereas I'm in bed early.
I think you might be older than I am. No, actually, no, I don't
think
you are.
I certainly look at a great beard. Yeah, Kimberley's been giving me a hard time about my beard all conference. Kimberley, who are you? How do you spend your time?
I am a matriarch of a large blended family. So I just married a man who had 6 children, and yes, I love him a lot. So together we have 8, and all in it's a family of 10.
Wow.
I spend a lot of time driving people around, and when I'm not doing that, I help charities transform their organizations.
Yeah,
that's really what I do. It's organizational change.
And you have a long history in the sector. You've been around a while.
I did. Oh my gosh, I fell into fundraising as a volunteer, like many people. My son is 20, so my first fundraising job was when he was 2, so 18 years, I guess.
Oh, wow. Okay.
I started raising money for a charity that I loved, and they eventually started paying me to do that. And they got me an AFP membership. So it was like $15 an hour from home for 20 hours a week, plus an AFP membership, which was transformative for me.
And you've been coming to conferences for a while. How many Congress in Toronto have you been to?
I started fundraising when my son was 2. So I've probably been to this particular conference 17 times.
Wow.
And I'm a bit of a conference junkie. I love it. I love it. It's amazing. You see the same people every year. Yeah. And a lot of the people that were at this conference were people that were there 17 years ago. Mm-hmm. And they've become your people.
Well, that's how we know each other, isn't it? Yeah. I think I only ever see you at conferences, really.
Right. Well,
which is great.
Yeah. You want to come skiing up in Barrie? You're welcome
Is there a conference up there?
Let's make one. We could do that.
Yeah, we could do that. So we got into this conversation about this post-conference idea. A lot of your clients and even yourself go back after this conference, sit in front of their desk, and maybe find themselves surrounded by people who don't know what they've just gone through, who don't know what they've learned, and are faced with friction. What's happening when people come away from there with this new knowledge?
Well, I think what happens is that we come here and we hug each other and we celebrate how awesome we are, and then we go back to our organizations and they still think we suck. Seriously. Yeah. So, and I have, I'm a consultant now, but I've had over the last 18 years, 2 executive director jobs and 2 director of development jobs. So always a senior leader working with program staff, a boss, and a board of directors. Mm-hmm. And I think one of the biggest concerns I have about these conferences, they're great to boost our spirit. They're great to inspire, to motivate, to make connections. And yet we're seeing very little change in the way charities operate, in the culture. The world is changing so much faster than we are as a sector. We're getting left behind. Mm-hmm. And it's something I've been giving a lot of thought to, as you know. I think it comes down to power, culture, leadership, and translation. We know what I mean by translation is, I don't mean translating from English to maybe Irish, but I mean, like I was an executive director for a company that funded research, and researchers research and they find solutions to problems. And then they look at, how do we translate this to benefit community? How will this change practices in doctor's office? What do we do? What can we do differently with this research? And how do we move from academic knowledge to translating it to benefit human beings? And we're not doing that in the charitable sector. We know, I was on a think tank with Rogari a couple of years ago, where a group of us took a look at Rogari as a think tank out of Plymouth University. For those of you who don't know, they have a great deal of research and thought leadership out in the sector that we should all be paying attention to, some of the smartest people in the world. And this particular project, we took a look at Ken Burnett's book, Relationship Fundraising, and asked ourselves, are we practicing relationship fundraising? If this was a pivotal book for the sector that was supposed to change how long we keep our donors and the way we interact with our donors, are we actually doing that? And if we're not, why are we not doing that? And ultimately, it comes down to, I think fundraising as a profession is grossly misunderstood. People don't know what it takes.
I mean, that's an old book. Ken Burnett's book is
1994,
old, and it's still completely right. And there's we haven't outgrown anything in it.
Right.
It all still works. It all still, it's proven.
Right.
And yet we're not seeing. I would say the majority of people in the sector probably haven't heard of the book.
Correct.
And the majority of people in the sector, therefore, are not implementing it.
Don't tell him that.
I know. Well, I'm sure he doesn't listen to me.
I might have gotten 1994 wrong, because it couldn't have been that long ago.
But we see it at conferences. The joke that I always make with people is how many times do we need to be told to write a thank you letter? And you hear that at every good conference. You'll hear how effective thank you letters are, and then you'll make a donation to an organization and you won't hear back from them.
So I wrote an article about this recently. Last year, I got married. And
congratulations.
Thank you. It was a pretty awesome wedding. I'm sorry you couldn't be there. It was really fun.
Yeah, my invitation must have got lost in Canada Post.
Well, yeah, there might have been a strike. So we decided to give to charity. So last year we gave to a number of organizations. Our total contribution to the sector was probably around $9,000.
Wow.
And not a single one of those organizations thanked me the way that we say we should be thanked, asked for a second gift the way they should have. It was all sort of a test.
Wow.
Even we go to fundraising events in our community as our way of entertainment. So if a women's shelter is having a comedy night, or there was a Easter Seals Dancing with the Stars, we go to these events, we spend our money, sometimes the same charity multiple times. We spend our money at the auctions. We're an excellent prospect for them, and they don't get back to us. So why is that?
Why?
I
was going to ask you.
Because what we talk about, there's a lot of talk about best practice in the sector, but there's not a lot of doing it. And I think it's because we are caught in this hamster wheel of managing tactics instead of leading change. Because we are dealing with all, the old parable about the babies floating down the river, and everybody's pulling all the babies out of the river, but nobody's actually going upstream to figure out, what, can I swear?
Yeah.
Why the fuck the babies are getting in the river? Like, who's doing that?
Yeah. So stop putting fucking babies in the river.
Really, we need to, and that change is going to come from us as fundraisers. We need to lead that. So, how do we lead that when nobody's listening to us? Well, first of all, we have to stop being assholes. Like, really. I think a lot of fundraisers.
That I'm going to struggle with that. Stop being an asshole.
Sorry.
But
so
what do you mean?
Chance
to
of
who?
Success for you.
to the rest of your organization?
It's frustrating, right? Obviously, I love these people. What's frustrating is that we come off of conferences like this and we're super inspired. And then we go back to our office and we ask for 15 minutes in a staff meeting so that we can share all of the brilliant things that we now know.
Yeah.
And program staff and the rest of our team and our executive director just sort of sit there and goes, okay, well, that was 15 minutes for development that I can never get back.
Yeah.
Right. Like,
Yeah.
So we need to start to think a little bit differently about a couple of things.
Mm-hmm.
Change management and our role as leaders. How are we going to carve out enough time in our week to create a vision, get some buy-in, find our champions, provide training, reinforce the skills. For example, at Ontario Nature is an organization I was a director of development at for quite a while.
Yeah.
One of the things that I wanted to make sure of was that when people phoned the office to make a donation, they didn't get transferred to the development department.
Yeah.
So one of the things we did in that, and my boss was amazing there in terms of understanding what a culture of philanthropy is and why it's important. But one of the shifts we made there was we did a little bit of training for everybody on staff to be able to process a gift. When a donor calls, you have this form in your desk, you pull it out, you ask these questions, and then you thank them and hang up the phone, and then you take that over to development.
Makes sense.
So much better than transferring it 4 times so that they get somebody's voicemail and the gift is never made.
Makes
right?
sense.
Right.
And I guess the leap there is that we're not trying to force people into fundraising or trying to work around the rest of people in our organization, but we're trying to hold their hand a little bit through it. Like we're trying to tell them what to say on that phone call, what details need to be captured, how to thank, talking them through the basics. And I suppose that is a priority when they go in the organization. You're managing the rest of the staff and you're, as you say, training the rest of the staff and trying to get that buy-in.
Well, and trying to get them excited about fundraising. Yeah, I worked in a conservation organization. I was the executive director there. And I needed to write a case for support. I needed to know why we were raising money. What did we need? So I asked the director of the research department. This is the largest lake in Ontario. Canada has the most of the world's fresh water. And
do you really?
Yeah, we really do.
Congratulations.
Yeah, thank you. So that's our little claim to fame. Now we need to look up how much fresh water Canada has. Like it's like huge. It's like 75%.
Yeah, really?
Yeah.
Wow.
Anyway, largest lake in Ontario. I said to the research guy, what do you need? Like if I actually literally did have a suitcase under my desk full of money, like you all think I do, what would you spend that money on?
Yeah.
And he said, I don't have a boat. I can't do benthic species research in the middle of this giant lake because I actually don't have a boat.
Yeah, yeah, that's tough.
All I had to do was get the guy a $20,000 boat. He became my best friend.
Yeah.
So when we approach our role as fundraisers from a position of service, from a position of humility, how can I make my colleagues' jobs easier? Instead of how can I convince them that I'm really smart and I know what I'm doing and they should listen to me? It's a mindset that needs to change. We need to be of service to them. And I think we need to do the same thing with our boards. And that will change the culture.
Yeah.
Helping them see what the benefit, how supporting the fundraising department can make their jobs easier.
Yeah.
Will change the culture.
I think the board one is an interesting one because I talked about that in one of my sessions. That one of the things I always recommend is if you have access to the board as a group, that's great. But even better is access to the board one-on-one, because it gives you an opportunity to just have a conversation with them, figure out where they're coming from, what they hate about fundraising, what they don't mind about fundraising, what their misunderstanding is, and then our job there is to walk them through it, is to show them what we need, show them what we can do for them, and give them a bit of guidance. I find I've done work with so many boards where they're afraid of phone campaigns, and a great exercise is to play them a recording of a phone call, of a thank you call, and suddenly they hear it and they get it and they understand it, and then maybe they're not so afraid of picking up the phone and making some phone calls for you.
That is such a cool thing to do. Yeah. Well, the thank you calls, when you start to talk to boards about 90% of fundraising doesn't involve asking for money.
Yes.
That you can get involved in acts of philanthropy in a different way and contribute to your own level.
Yes.
let's start making it. I mean, these are senior level volunteers. We're mistreating them. They're senior level volunteers who are passionate about our cause. That's why they want to contribute. They're passionate about our cause. They come in, we put them on the board without having a conversation about what our expectations are. Or this is where the babies are getting thrown in the stream, Simon, because seriously, it starts with board recruitment. Every organization I have worked in or for, always, if you start to go upstream to figure out how are we going to shift that culture, it starts with leadership at the board level. And we know that. What we're not doing is, as fundraisers, influencing the change, having mission moments in board meetings, keeping them connected. Most boards that I have worked with over the years are incredibly bored. They hate coming to board meetings. They do not. They get a manual. They look at financial statements. Fundraising is something that is patronized often. And then there's an unrealistic expectation. The other thing is major gifts. Let's talk about major gifts. Like it takes 18 to 24 months to earn a major gift, but our organizations are stuck on a 12-month budget cycle. So we can't, as fundraisers, really truly let the donor lead the way in how they want their values extended or the impact that they want to have, because we actually, year end is coming. So there's a lot of pressure on us to reconcile those two things. And when I did a survey for one of my clients I've done it a couple of times with boards now, where I have a private conversation with the board and we find out why they were involved, what motivates them, how they think they could contribute more, what are their feelings around fundraising, should the board fundraise. One client in particular, every board member except for the president said, no, we should have absolutely nothing to do with fundraising. When we went to the board workshop and I presented the results of the survey and then educated them and said, okay, we're not going to talk about asking for money. We're going to talk about donor motivations, what a big deal the charitable sector is, your responsibility in the world, the gap that you fill, why you're all sitting at the table, and how we can strengthen relationships with donors. How many of you want to do that stuff? They all want to do that. That's why they signed up. But when we say we expect you to fundraise,
well, they think it's cold call. They think it's cold calling. They think it's imposition. And actually now what it is connecting people who want to do something, who
actually care about this cause. So one chair, I wanted him to go out and ask, this is, naive of me. I know better now. But I said, would you please go and ask 4 of your friends for $5,000 and make a commitment, $25,000 with you leading the way with 5 and challenging 4 friends to do that. He said, Kimberly, if I go do that, I could open my Rolodex for you and I could go and ask 4 of my friends for $5,000. The very next week, they're going to come back and ask me for $5,000. So I'm going to end up spending $25,000 anyway, 20 of which is going to go to charities that I don't actually care about. I just want to give you $25,000. Like, isn't that a better way? It's so smart.
That's funny.
Yeah, it's kind of funny.
That's bizarre. So if let's talk on a practical level, because I don't want to keep you too long. But imagine you're back in your role. Obviously, you're a consultant now. You're working all over the place. You're working from home and you're working in different people's offices. Say you're just a junior position, or you're someone who's working for a nonprofit. You come out of these conferences and you have your list of 3 things to do, 5 things to do, 10 things you've learned from the thing. You pick up your Tim Hortons on the way to work. You sit in front of the computer. What do you do differently? How do you make sure, to steal your word, which is you've been harping on for years about and is new to me? How do you translate that? How do you translate into the real thing? How do you start?
I think it goes back to, there's a management guru called John Kotter. I don't know if you know Kotter's 8 Principles of Change.
No.
It's an old idea. Maybe it's another podcast. And I've been reading a lot of leadership books to try to answer that very question. What is leadership versus management, and what and how can we do differently to lead the kind of change that the sector needs? One of them is understanding how change happens in an organization. And finding a champion is like step number 1. And changing a culture is step number 8. And it takes I've done this several times with several organizations. It takes 18 to 24 years. It takes constant vigilance. So getting back to that fundraiser who's maybe a mid-level junior or even a director of development, and they've got 3 things that they want to do differently. I would say, first of all, write them down and put them up on your board and be disciplined about it. Look at making sure that you're not spending your entire day in that urgent and important box. But you're spending some time doing non-urgent important things, maybe the first hour of the day. So depending on what the objective is, create your list of objectives, then the tactics you need to get to that place. One of the first things will be to find a champion to help you, because we can't do it alone.
And who's that? There's someone internal or someone on the board or someone, another fundraiser?
It's someone with power.
Yeah.
Someone who has more power than you.
Okay.
Go to the person in your organization who believes in you, trusts you, and has more power than you, and say, this is my plan. I'd like to implement better donor stewardship, because I know if we can keep more donors, our organization will be stronger. And even though, that's another problem. Stewardship costs money, but it doesn't have any revenue up against it. So how do you measure it? And boards don't understand that. One board that wanted to cut postage. Why is your postage going up? Well, because we're sending out thank you cards and life stamps now, right? And that's important. So find your local your champion who is going to support you in doing this. Have some discipline and rigor around making sure that you spend that time for an hour in the morning. The thing about emails, if you don't respond to them, they often just go away. Like seriously, get out of your email box. If somebody needs you, they're going to find you. Yeah. Right. So we get caught up in this email cycle where we're not having real conversations. Yeah. So
carve out the time to actually do these things and keep them front and center, and because I know I've been the same, that sometimes they fizzle out a week or two after a conference. They'll fizzle out, and then it's not until a year later that they come back to the front of your mind.
We talk about accountability partners and things like that. I think one of there's a common feeling of deflation when you leave a conference and then you're back in your office 3 weeks later and you're just like, fuck. So whatever we can do to really map out what kind of change we need in our organization. And secondly, this idea that, that won't work for me. Well, I'm sorry. You are the master of your domain. You figure it out. Like, this is what worked for one organization. So ask yourself, how can we do something like that here? How would that work here? Look for the yes and find your champions to help drive that change home.
That's cool. I like it. Okay, I'm not going to keep you much longer. Obviously, if people want to talk to you about champions, you're a good motivator in terms of cracking the whip and making sure people get this stuff done.
I'm a bit of an ass.
You're a bit of an asshole. Yeah. Where do they find you? What's the best place for people to find you?
Well, Twitter, I'm at Kimberley Canada. My website is kimberleymackenzie.ca. My phone number is 289-231-1339. It's so funny. It's all over the internet. No one ever. Once in a while I get a phone call from Africa. Somebody, please help me rescue my entire village from poverty. I know.
So kimberleymackenzie.ca is the website.
That's great.
And then Kimberley Canada, that's you?
That's me, Ley. Yeah.
That's nice. Good.
Thanks.
As I said earlier, you've got a lot of writing on that kind of stuff in terms of this translation topic. You've been harping on about it for years, and a lot of other good articles around the internet that I learn a lot from. So I really appreciate you taking the time to chat about this, and you'll come back soon.
I would love to, Simon. Thanks for chatting with me.
Next time we're in Toronto, let's do another one, and let's talk about maybe that book, The 8 Steps that you talked about.
Oh, yeah, John Cotter. Sure.
Whatever you want to do. All right, Kimberley, thank you so much. If I don't see you before, I'll see you at next year's Congress.
Thanks, man.
Take care.
You've been listening to Simon Scriver's Amazingly Ultimate Fundraising Superstar podcast. Don't forget to subscribe and head over to changefundraising.com to learn more or get in touch with Simon. Or don't, whatever, you're big enough to